Hello, my name's Graham Shearer. I'm the Associate Pastor of East London Tabernacle Baptist Church, and this is the next in the series of videos we're doing on the Apostles' Creed, this ancient summary of faith which has been confessed by Christians across the globe and down the centuries. This time, we've got to the phrase in the Creed where we confess that Jesus descended to the dead, or in some versions of the Creed, descended into hell. And I find that when we say this creed, when we say the creed together in church, this is the clause in the creed that people have most questions about, perhaps apart from one other clause, which we'll get to later on. It seems a strange idea. What are we saying when we say that Jesus descended to the dead, or even descended to hell? And one of the things that I found most helpful thinking about this phrase, what it means, what the early church who compiled this creed meant by the phrase, is this book by Matthew Emerson called "He Descended to the Dead." It's, if you're looking for something to really dig into to understand why it is we say this clause, this book is well worth getting hold of. You can look at the article that he did on the Gospel Coalition website. I'll put a link in the description and have a look at that. But what I'm about to say is very much drawn from his excellent work in his book. So what do we mean when we say Jesus descended to the dead? The first thing we need to do is work out what the correct wording of the clause is. Are we saying that Jesus descended to the dead, or that he descended to hell? The latter makes it sound as if Jesus went to the place of eternal torment, the lake of fire that we read about in Revelation 21. And most of us, I imagine, instinctively recoil from that idea. Well, the good news is that is not what the Creed is saying. The confusion probably arises from two Latin words that were included in the different versions of the Creed. Infernos, which means the place of the dead, and infina, which means hell. You can see how the two would get confused. Infernos, infina. Very easy to get mixed up. And probably both initially had very similar meanings. The place of the dead. What the early church intended to communicate by the descent to the dead was not ever that Jesus went to the place of eternal torment. That was not the agenda. Rather, what they're intending to communicate by this phrase, he descended to the dead, is that Jesus died just like anybody else. At the point of death, his body and his soul were separated, just like ours was. His body lay in the tomb, dead and lifeless, while his soul descended to the place of the dead. In the Old Testament, that where the souls of those who have died go to is called Sheol, or Hades. It's a place where souls that have been separated from their bodies go, waiting for the day where God will keep his promise to one day reunite body and soul in the resurrection. And it's a place where everybody, both wicked and righteous, both those who love God and those who reject God, go. And yet there is a separation between those who reject God and those who trust in God. Think of the parable that Jesus tells of the rich man and Lazarus. The rich man who's not been generous towards God, he goes to, in some sense, the same place as Abraham and Lazarus. He's aware of their presence. He can speak to Abraham. And yet Abraham tells him there is an unbridgeable chasm between Abraham and the rich man. And that parable reflects the biblical conception of what happened to human souls after they died. That they go to a place where they wait for the resurrection of the dead and the final judgment that was to come. And so what this clause is saying is that Jesus experienced death just like every other human. On Easter Saturday, while his body was lying lifeless in the tomb, his soul descended to the place of the dead. That was where the place of the dead was kind of conceptualized to be. under the earth. We see biblical evidence for this in places like Ephesians 4, verse 9, or Romans 10, verse 7, where Paul makes reference to the fact that Jesus Christ has descended under the earth. And that's why in Revelation chapter 1, Jesus says that he is the one who holds the keys of death and Hades. Because he has been there, he has gone through there. But of course, as he does that, he does it as the one who has paid for sin, who has defeated death on the cross. And so his descent into the realm of the dead is one of victorious triumph. He does not go to the dead as one who has to passively wait for a rescue, but rather he descends to the dead with a message of liberation to tell those who are waiting for the fulfillment of God's promises that God has been faithful, that the victory has been won, that light has triumphed over darkness. Now we might think this is a slightly strange idea, an idea that perhaps we don't see popping up in our Bibles all that regularly. So why does the Creed include it in such a short summary of what the Bible teaches? Well, I think there are two key reasons why it's important for us to understand and to confess this truth together. First of all, it tells us something about Jesus. There have been times in the life of the church when people have been tempted to think about Jesus as someone who had a human body, but essentially inside that body was purely and simply divine. That he was, as some people put it, God with skin on. That he possessed the physical aspects of humanity, but not the invisible, immaterial aspects of what it means to be human, to have a conscience, to have a will, to have emotions. But confessing that Jesus descended to the dead reminds us that not only did Jesus have a human body, but he had a human soul as well. He possessed all the aspects of human existence, both material and immaterial. And that's really important because if Jesus did not have the immaterial aspects of humanity, if he didn't have a human will, a human conscience, human emotions, then those aspects of our humanity would not be able to be redeemed by him and healed by him. But because Jesus did have a soul that while his body was lying lifeless, descended to the realm of the dead, we can have confidence that his redemption and his transformation stretches to even those parts of our experience that are immaterial, that our wills can be remade, that our consciences can be cleansed, that our emotions can be attuned to the reality in which we lived, able to rejoice in the truth and mourn with those who mourn. Because Jesus had a body and a soul that descended to the dead, we can have confidence that his redemption is total and comprehensive, that every aspect of our human existence will be healed. Second, the fact that Jesus descended to the dead tells us something about the future. One day, if Jesus doesn't return before then, you and I will die and our souls will be separated from our bodies. Our bodies will be lifeless, just like Jesus's was. But our souls will live on. We will not disappear from existence. But because we know that Jesus has descended to the dead, we will know, just like the thief on the cross knew, as Jesus told him, "Today I will be with you in paradise," that when our souls are separated from our bodies, they will go to be with Jesus. Because Jesus has descended to the dead, we know that when our soul is separated from our body, it will not go to a shadowy, a dark place, but a place filled with the luminous radiance of the glorious risen Christ, we will go to be with him. As we wait for the hope of the resurrection, of which he will be a living, visible embodiment, we will be with him. Because Jesus has descended to the dead, we can know that while there will come a day when our bodies are separated from our souls, there will never be a day when we are separated from the Lord Jesus. Because he has descended to the dead, we will be with him until we, like him, receive the glorious resurrection bodies which we will live in for all eternity. So that's why when we confess that Jesus descended to the dead, we can do so with joy and with confidence, knowing that it secures the totality of our redemption and the certainty of our hope. That's it for this time. Please do press subscribe if you'd like to know when the next videos are posted, and I'll see you next time.